Oui, c'est juste pour la prise de refuge. Je traduis. Et à la fin, je pense idéalement.
On va commencer, bonjour. Sangye chudan soki chunan lan chan chun paradon dane chan su ji tagi chin su kimpe sunam gi cholan pinchiri sangye chun parasho sangye chudan soki chunan lan chan chun paradon dane chab su ji tagi chin su kimpe sunam gi chola pinche sangye drupala sho sangye chudan soki chuna la janchu parado tane chapso chi tagi jinso gimpe sunam ki chola pinche sangye drupala sho simshin tamshi dewa tong tewe gyu tong tempala jirji tonga tong Dongara gi gyu tong chawa gyu jien dongara mepe dewa dampa tong men jawa ju ji nyeri cha tong tong chewe tanyam chenpo la neba jure ji palen sawe lama shenpo jen tage chewa Peme ten sha lai ka jin jin be kum ne je sun de ko sun to ge nga da saran to saran chum den den jang be yon la cha sa lo kang ge lo je je ne jen je nie ta nan ta sha se we jie nie de ge si jie zi jie ni ge dong ka len pam se kanda je be chan ra ra ma je mon ta dong a je je we do zo gen lan po jie ta la se yin lan de je yang ten sa chun ta che cho nyo mo ni long le ki cha cho ta ze jie ma re mu ze dong a la nyo gu jin ye che ze che de nam de ne ta xin sa ju ta la se yan ten le zo ge se ta wa kwa chun ta che tong che ne kin je da le mun se jang pe yang la de se de che ji jian la se ge da le de mo mun pa sha se ne kan dan de she shun lo ta pa ye lon zhen bon pe na wa zhe do so. Donc on va continuer avec la présentation de l'Abhidharma.
We'll continue with the presentation of the Abhidharmakosha, which we began in 2023, I believe. We're currently working on the second chapter out of 8. The first chapter that we have repeated, and which is concluded now, is the presentation of the dhatus, within which, as you may recall, we looked at the 5 aggregates, the 12 ayatanas, and the 18 dhatus. Now we're working on the second chapter, which is the presentation of the governing faculties. This second chapter is divided into 3 parts. The first part is the part that covers the governing faculties in and of themselves, which is called the nature of the faculties. We concluded this part. It's done now. And now we're working on the second part, towards the end of the second part, which is entitled The Mode of Birth of Conditioned Phenomena. We won't go into the details about this part. It was the object of the previous sessions. But we can look at the outline of the chapter in general, the part that we have already covered. So we started this mode of birth of conditioned phenomena, and within this section we first studied the mode of birth of material phenomena. And then there comes a second part, which is what we're currently working on, the mode of birth of immaterial phenomena. This section began with a concise presentation and then continued with a second explanation, which was much more detailed. This is the explanation that we are currently working on. This detailed explanation began with the conditioning phenomena associated by similarity with mind. We studied the 46 mental events, the various great bases of sovereign mind. That's a section that we concluded last time, and we then began the next section, which is the part that we're currently working on, which is called the conditioning phenomena not associated by similarity with sovereign mind. That is the part that we're working on. We covered the concise presentation, and now we are looking at the detailed explanation. Within the first part of this detailed explanation, there is a section called obtaining and non-obtaining. The first subsection is obtaining and non-obtaining, concerning all of the various conditioning phenomena not associated by similarity with sovereign mind. The first two, which are presented in this section, are obtaining and non-obtaining. We identified their nature. We studied what is obtained in general and in particular. And we reached a section on particularities. We began this section concerning the particularities of obtaining. As a reminder, obtaining is the first of the conditioning phenomena not associated by similarity with mind. And we left off in this section on the particularities of obtaining. We looked at particularities in terms of time, in terms of nature, in terms of realm, in terms of at what point on the path, either the path of learning or the path beyond learning. We looked at particularities in terms of what is to be abandoned and what is not to be abandoned. And we started a particular case concerning obtaining, which is entitled Particular Cases of Temporal Particularity. Concerning obtaining, there are particularities concerning temporality, and this particular case is what we are studying. Last time we just began this section, and out of these temporal particularities, we looked at the particularity of obtaining a phenomenon that is undefined and which does not hinder liberation. That is the point we left off with last time, in February. Now, we come to the particular case of obtaining phenomenon that is also undefined, but in this case, which hinders liberation. And so here we'll get further information about this type of obtaining. Hello, everyone. Okay, so now we have gone over the outline and we see where we are within the text. Now what I propose is that we do a little review based on the root stanzas of the text. So if we go over the conditioning phenomena not associated by similarity, we saw that there is a first concise presentation. In this concise presentation, they are listed, numbered and listed. This was in stanza 35, lines 2 through 4, which reads, conditioning phenomena not associated are 14 in number: obtaining, non-obtaining, shared part, the state without distinctions, and even engagements. This continues in stanza 36, lines 1 and 2. Life force faculty, characteristics, groups of words, and still others. Oh, groups of names and still others. Now we come to the detailed explanation of these non-associated conditioning phenomena, and more specifically, the presentation of obtaining and non-obtaining. We have identified the nature of obtaining and non-obtaining in stanza 36. Obtaining is acquisition and possession. Then we looked at what is obtained or non-obtained. Obtaining and non-obtaining concern what is included in one's own continuity, continuum, as well as the two cessations. And then we began the particularities, beginning with those of obtaining, in terms of time, in terms of nature, etc., realm, etc. The stanzas say, obtaining of phenomena in the 3 times is in 3 moments. Obtaining virtuous phenomena, etc., is virtuous, etc. Obtaining things belonging to the 3 realms is of the corresponding realm. Obtaining what is not part of the 3 realms is of 4 kinds. Obtaining what is neither in progress of learning nor beyond learning is of 3 types. It is held that obtaining what is not to be abandoned is of 2 types. All of this is review. We covered this in detail during our last session. Then we started studying the particular cases of temporal particularities. Last time we saw that undefined phenomena are of two types. Phenomena that are undefined, not hindering liberation, on the one hand, and undefined phenomena hindering liberation, on the other hand. We studied the case of obtaining that is undefined, not hindering liberation. We saw this through lines 38, line 4, and 39, line 1, which say, obtaining of what is not defined is simultaneous, except for the two extrasensory knowledges and mind of emanation. And that's where we left off. And now, with a mind that's a bit fresher, we can start with the particular case of obtaining that is undefined, and a phenomenon that is undefined and hindering liberation. Stanza 39, line 2 says, this is also the case for obtaining a form that acts as an obstacle to liberation. This obtaining is of two types. Some will have 3 moments of obtaining, others will not. Certain obtainings of phenomena that are undefined, hindering liberation, do not occur in 3 moments. To illustrate this, Khelzang Puntso uses an example. The example of Brahma and noble Tatul. Tatul is the name of a person. Noble Tatul went to Brahma's heaven Brahma was bragging about being the creator of all worlds. Thus, noble Tatul asked questions of him. He asked what the earth rests on. Brahma replied that it rests upon water. Then noble Tatul asked him what water rests on. Brahma replied that it rests on the air. Then Tatul asked what the air rests on, and Brahma replied that it rests upon space. And then, lastly, noble Tatul asked what space rests on, but Brahma did not know how to reply. He had a lot of pride, and not having the answer, he dressed Tatul down and said, "Do you doubt me? You don't believe me? I am Brahma." This is evasive hiding of things and deceit. These are mental events that we covered earlier. Brahma was very self-absorbed. His appearance was beautiful. He had a lot of power. He asked Tatu why he was there. And he told him that he should go ask these questions to the Buddha who was in the desire realm. So Tatu went to the desire realm and asked Buddha these questions. And Buddha replied that space does not rest on anything. There is no support for it. Space cannot be apprehended by consciousness. It is not an object of focus. So this concludes the example of Brahma and Noble Tatu. In the example, Brahma uses evasive hiding and deceit. He was evasive and had a very prideful attitude. Concerning the words that Brahma spoke, they are sound, which is matter, and the movement of body is also matter. These two are indicative actions of body and speech. This matter, which is indicative actions of body and speech, and the obtaining of this matter occurs over the course of 3 times. Occurs all at once. It does not occur over the course of 3 times, 3 moments. Last time we saw that all things that are part of our body can be obtained. We went over the stanza 37, which says at the beginning, what is included in one's own continuum. This way of acting on the part of Brahma, in terms of body, in terms of the words that he spoke, all of this is part of his personal continuum, his body. And therefore, there is obtaining. But these things do not have 3 moments of obtaining. There's no pre-obtaining or post-obtaining. This concludes the particular case of obtaining a phenomenon that is undefined and which hinders liberation. If I review it, going over the stanzas, obtaining what is undefined is simultaneous, with the exception of the 2 supersensory consciousnesses. And my root text is gone. Sorry, guys. And mind of emanation. This is also the case for obtaining a form that acts as an obstacle to liberation. So now we've looked at 2 particular cases. There's 1 left, which is obtaining a phenomenon that is virtuous or not. Obtaining a virtuous or non-virtuous phenomenon is the 3rd particular case concerning obtaining. This refers to stanza 39, the third line of stanza 39, which reads, "In the desire realm, there is no pre-obtaining of matter." So in this particular case, we'll ask ourselves the question, is obtaining of a thing that is virtuous or non-virtuous something that occurs over the course of 3 moments? In other words, a moment of pre-obtaining, a moment of obtaining, and a moment of post-obtaining. Is this the way that this happens? For certain phenomena, this will be the case, and for others, this will not be the case. And we'll look at both cases here. The first case that we'll look at is an example of a virtuous or non-virtuous phenomenon whose obtaining does not occur over the course of 3 moments or times. And the examples of this are the disciplines, which sometimes are translated as vows. In this context, we'll use the word discipline, disciplines and non-disciplines in the desire realm, which refer to 8 types of discipline of individual liberation and non-discipline. These phenomena, these 8 disciplines of individual liberation and non-discipline, are not subject to 2 moments of obtaining. They are only subject to 2 moments of obtaining. There is the moment of obtaining itself, and then there's also post-obtaining. This post-obtaining continues until we encounter a cause for abandoning the discipline, which will cause the discipline to cease. Then there is a second case, which is also that of a phenomenon that is virtuous or non-virtuous, but in this case has 3 moments of obtaining. An example of virtue obtained over the course of 3 times is meditative absorption, or discipline arising from meditative absorption. Obtaining discipline arising from meditative absorption is a phenomenon that has 3 moments of obtaining. We saw earlier, or previously, that when we talk about discipline, we can find 3 types of discipline. There are disciplines of individual liberation. Once again, sometimes this is translated as vows of individual liberation, but in this context we use the term discipline. Then there are disciplines arising from meditative absorption and disciplines dissociated from factors for descent. These are the 3 types of disciplines that exist. Here, in this case that we're studying, we're talking about the second discipline, discipline arising from meditative absorption. All of these points on the particularities that we're covering within this, at this point, Khelzang Puntso, who was teaching the Abhidharmakosha, said to us, this might seem confusing, and not that useful, but understanding obtaining is a key to understanding the Vaibhashika view. It's a very important point within the Vaibhashika view. No pressure, though. Let me just add something to get rid of the pressure. Obtaining is something that we will cover all throughout our study of the Abhidharmakosha. We'll come back to it again and again with examples and different cases concerning how obtaining is used or works. So if you don't understand it now, there will be many occasions to understand what it is. So here we're talking about meditative absorption. So we're talking about a virtue that will have these 3 moments when it is obtained. And this concerns when we attain discipline arising from meditative absorption. For example, when we obtain meditative absorption of cessation, this is meditative absorption where there is no sovereign mind nor mental events. When I use the term meditative absorption of cessation, this is a synonym for the even engagement or even state of cessation. So when there is this even engagement of cessation, during this even engagement, there is no sovereign mind nor mental events. They stop. Nevertheless, those who possess this even engagement of cessation are still beings with a sovereign mind. So some people ask, how can you be a being that is endowed with sovereign mind when during this even engagement you don't have sovereign mind or mental events? That's a small debate. And the Vaibhashika reply that indeed at this moment there is no sovereign mind nor mental events, and nevertheless these people who possess this even engagement, they are nevertheless sentient beings. In other words, they have sovereign mind and mental events, but they have obtaining of sovereign mind and the mental events. To give a more general example, which was perhaps also shared last time, it's a bit like having money in the bank. When we have money in the bank, we have an account with money in it, and potentially we have a credit card. And when we wander around away from the bank, away from our account, we have a credit card, but we don't have money with us. But the credit card gives us access to the money. The credit card is like obtaining in this example. We keep it with us, and it constantly allows us to access the money in our bank account. In the same way, if we consider noble beings who are in even engagement or samadhi, at the moment that they are in meditation, in their mind, there is the path of seeing or the path of meditation, depends what path they're on. And at the moment when they come out of samadhi, they are no longer on the path of seeing or the path of meditation. They've come out of their samadhi, but we still call them noble beings. They remain noble beings. And why do we still talk about noble beings even though they are out of their samadhi or meditative absorption? Because they have the obtaining of the path of seeing or the path of meditation. They keep the obtaining of these two paths with them. A bit like the example of a credit card. Even if we're not in the bank in the presence of our account, if we are outdoors and we have outside somewhere and we have a credit card, then we can still use our money. At this point, Khelzang came back to the example of the bank and the credit card, and he said, for example, if I'm someone very wealthy, if I have $1 million that I have placed in a Swiss bank account, then the money is not with me. Nevertheless, I'm still a rich person. Why? Because I have the credit card that allows me to access the money in the bank. The credit card is, in this analogy, like obtaining. It's not the phenomenon itself, but it is what allows to have constant access to this phenomenon. Would you like to take a 2-minute break? So now we have concluded the particularities of obtaining. We will be able to continue with the particularities of non-obtaining. We'll begin with this in terms of essence. Stanza 39, line 4 reads, "Non-obtaining is undefined and does not hinder liberation." What this tells us is that, in essence, non-obtaining is neither virtuous nor non-virtuous. It is undefined. It does not hinder liberation. So then we'll begin by defining what non-obtaining is. Non-obtaining is a phenomenon that excludes. Non-obtaining is a phenomenon that excludes. As we saw previously for the object that is obtained, the object that is obtained, that is acquired by the one who has the obtaining, here what is non-obtained is what is not acquired by the one who has a non-obtaining. What is non-obtained is that which is not acquired by the one with the non-obtaining. Bit of a tough sentence. I'll read it again. The definition is that non-obtaining is a phenomenon that excludes. As we saw previously, for an object that is obtained, it is acquired by the one who has the obtaining. Here, what is non-obtained is what is not acquired by the one who has a non-obtaining. We'll take questions at the end. Thank you. Now we'll look at an example. For example, who has vows or discipline of a fully ordained monk in this room? Apparently nobody. Therefore, there is no one who possesses these vows. Therefore, who has a non-obtaining of these vows? Those who do not have the possession of these vows. Therefore, we have non-obtaining of the vows of a fully ordained monk. In the same way, we currently do not possess phenomena dissociated from factors for descent, like the truth of the path, for example. Not being in possession of the truth of the path, we thus have non-obtaining of it. So now we've looked at the particularities of non-obtaining in terms of essence. Now we'll continue in terms of time. The following stanza, stanza 40, line 1, reads, non-obtaining of past or unborn phenomena is of three types. Non-obtaining of past or unborn phenomena is of three types. So once again, we come to a particularity of This non-obtaining of the desire realm. If it's a being of the form realm, this non-obtaining is of the form realm. If it's a being of the formless realm, non-obtaining of the truth of the path is in relation to the formless realm. Now we come to the fourth particularity, the fourth particularity of non-obtaining, which is called no non-obtaining dissociated from factors for descent. This is the fourth particularity. This refers to stanza 40, lines 3 and 4, which states, "It is considered that non-obtaining of the path is present for an ordinary being." In the preceding point, we already started talking about the non-obtaining of the truth of the path. It is considered that non-obtaining of the path is present in an ordinary being. Here, the question at hand is, how can we identify an ordinary being? The condition of ordinary being. How can we define the condition of ordinary being? Here, for the Vaibhashika to define the condition of an ordinary being, this is based on the presence of non-obtaining of the truth of the path. An ordinary being is one who has non-obtaining of the truth of the path. In a treatise, the Vaibhashika explain that the condition of ordinary being is not just what we call sentient being. It's not simply the fact of being a sentient being. When we talk about an ordinary being, the condition of ordinary being, this is defined on the basis of the presence of non-obtaining of the truth of the path. For them, this is what an ordinary being is. In contrast, a noble being is one who possesses the obtaining of the truth of the path. This is the point of view of the Vaibhashika treatise. When we talk about an ordinary being, the condition of ordinary being, this is among what are known as conditioning phenomena dissociated or non-associated from factors for descent. Among these conditioning phenomena, the condition of ordinary being is the conditioning phenomena non-associated by similarity with mind of non-obtaining of the truth of the path. We're currently looking at non-obtaining, the particularities of non-obtaining, and non-obtaining of the truth of the path is what makes an ordinary being ordinary. This is the condition of being an ordinary being. if we say that an ordinary being is defined by a conditioning phenomena that is non-associated, then it is among the 14 non-associated conditioning phenomena. We are just beginning this list. Among these 14, it is connected to the non-associated conditioning phenomenon known as non-obtaining. There are various types of non-obtaining. The So to sum things up, beings can be divided into two categories. Those who have non-obtaining of the truth of the path are ordinary beings, and those who have obtaining of the truth of the path are called noble beings. That was the fourth particularity of non-obtaining. Now we come to the fifth particularity, which is the particularity in terms of manner of regressing. So here we'll explain the way that non-obtaining will be abandoned or damaged. This non-obtaining can be abandoned, damaged, it can regress. This is what we'll look at now. This refers to stanza 40, line 4, along with stanza 41, line 1. Here the root text states, obtaining such a path and the change of level completely damages this non-obtaining. Obtaining such a path and change of level completely damage this non-obtaining. The first cause that will damage non-obtaining is obtaining. Here, for example, at a certain point, we can be in the grips of false view. It might be a view that will deny the law of cause and effect. We're in the grips of this false view, and being within the grips of this false view, then the roots of virtue are cut off. As the roots of virtue are cut off, then at this point, non-obtaining of virtue occurs. But later, we can consider the law of causality to be true. At this point, we no longer have false view concerning the law of cause and effect. At this point, the roots of virtue, which were cut off, are renewed. Now there is obtaining of virtue. This is something that can occur later on. And so when there is obtaining of virtue, this obtaining of virtue that we acquire damages or chases away non-obtaining of virtue that we had before. To say it more simply, obtaining and non-obtaining of a thing cannot coexist. If one is present, the other will be abandoned. That was the first cause for damaging or abandoning non-obtaining. Which we found in stanza 40 and 41, last line and first line. Now we'll look at the second cause that will damage or cause regression of non-obtaining. This second cause is changing levels. What does it mean to change levels? This means transmigrating from one level to another. We'll give examples. It'll be easier to understand. We already talked about the different levels. We'll talk about them again here. For example, if we're in the desire realm, for example, we are humans, we are in the desire realm. Currently, we have non-obtaining of phenomena or dharmas of the form realm because we are of the desire realm. But if later on we come to be reborn in the form realm, which can happen, then at this point, when we are reborn in the form realm, we will have obtaining of the phenomena or dharmas of the form realm. And at this point, when we have obtaining of the dharmas of the form realm, then the non-obtaining that we had in the desire realm will be chased away. It will be replaced by obtaining of the dharmas of the form realm. When we change levels and are born in the form realm, then this non-obtaining is chased away by the obtaining of phenomena of the form realm. So now we'll look at another example. The same thing, but going from the form realm to when we go from the form realm to the desire realm. For beings who live in the form realm, these beings have non-obtaining of the virtues, for example, of the desire realm, because they live in the form realm. They have obtaining of the virtues of the form realm, but they have non-obtaining of the virtues of the desire realm. Thus, they have non-obtaining of the virtues of the desire realm. If these beings later come to be born in the desire realm, they will obtain the virtues of the desire realm. And at this point, the non-obtaining that they had will be chased away by the obtaining of virtues of the desire realm. Changing levels chases away non-obtaining. In relation to everything that we saw on non-obtaining up till now, what is important to retain, to keep in mind, on non-obtaining is that so the first thing is the definition. Non-obtaining is a phenomenon that excludes. It's important to remember the essence of non-obtaining. In other words, that it can be virtuous, non-virtuous, or not defined, undefined. And also, it can be... That makes sense. We need to remember its essence, which is whether it is virtuous, non-virtuous, or undefined. In the case of non-obtaining, it can only be undefined, not hindering liberation. Lastly, it's important to remember that an ordinary being is defined by non-obtaining of the truth of the path. So those are the important things to remember concerning non-obtaining. If you have questions, we have about 10 minutes now. If you have questions, we'll do our best to answer. If you don't have questions, we'll continue. A question in relation to change of a level, going from desire realm to the form realm. What I understood is that there are latent imprints, karmic latent imprints, and so due to this, maybe I'm mixing things up. We change levels, and here it seems that there's not a condition of latent imprints that continue to exist when we change levels. I'm not so sure what you mean in terms of karmic imprints that remain when we change levels. Maybe I'm mixing things up from other teachings, that there's this idea that when we're reborn, when we change levels, then there's something that's still there. So here, this point on change of level, it doesn't describe what a change of level is. It doesn't go into the details of how this happens, what causes us to go from one level to another, what causes one to go from being a human in the desire realm to being in the form realm, in Brahma's heaven. There will be some explanations. It'll be covered a bit in chapter 3. But here, we are just talking about non-obtaining. This conditioning phenomena, non-associated by similarity with mind, which is non-obtaining. And within this, there is this point on how do we lose it? For example, here, we're humans. We have non-obtaining of the virtue of the form realm. As we're humans, we can't have the virtue of the form realm. And therefore, this is a non-obtaining that is always with us. If one day we are reborn from the human realm into the form realm, if we're born in the form realm, then due to being born in the form realm, we will lose this non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. That's all that's explained here. It's really just about this point of non-obtaining and how it is lost or damaged, rather than an explanation on how we go from one level to another. I get stuck on non-obtaining in terms of time. Because furthermore, you just explained that, for example, when we're in the desire realm, we have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. I don't understand why this non-obtaining can't be expressed in the present, because you also explained that non-obtaining cannot manifest in the present, because in the present only obtaining is possible. Sorry, we couldn't hear you up front. So let's come back to non-obtaining in terms of time. You said that in the present there is pre-non-obtaining and post-non-obtaining, but there is no non-obtaining present, because we can only have obtaining. But then you just said that in the desire realm, we all have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. So I don't understand why non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm can't be expressed in the present in the desire realm. I don't understand. Non-obtaining of the form realm will... Let's try again. In the desire realm, we have the non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. When we'll be in the form realm, then we'll have obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. But we're talking about the virtues of the form realm. Okay, wait. Another Abhidharmakosha is intervening. Yeah, but it's said that non-obtaining can't occur in the three moments, past, present, and future. What I understood, what I wrote down, is that non-obtaining in terms of time is that a phenomenon non-obtaining cannot express itself in the present, because in the present only obtaining is possible. That's what I don't understand, because in any case we have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. So why is that not in the present? When the phenomenon arises, it can only be obtained. If it's present, we can't have non-obtaining. Right, but in this very moment, I can feel that I have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm in every moment. So that's what I don't understand. We're talking about the non-obtaining of a past phenomenon, the non-obtaining of a future phenomenon that we can conceive of, and this case is the non-obtaining of a present phenomenon. And in the sense, if we look, non-obtaining of a present phenomenon is not possible. If the phenomenon is present, can it be non-obtained? When I'm talking about a present phenomenon, in the current of my being, there is virtue, for example. In the moment when this virtue is present, can it be non-obtained? Can I have non-obtaining of the virtue which coexists with the virtue being present? When we're talking about non-obtaining of a present phenomenon, that's all it means. It doesn't mean that when we're living, we can't have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. It's something that is present. That is a non-obtaining which is present in every moment for a human. We'll have non-obtaining of the virtues of the form realm. But the point, which was explained here, isn't that. It is, can we non-obtain a phenomenon that is present within our being? In the present, can we have both a phenomenon in the current of our being and at the same time the non-obtaining of this same phenomenon? That's what the stanza talks about here. It's saying that this is not possible. That's what that explanation was pointing to. I think it's just a question of terms, but here when we're talking about a present phenomenon, this means a phenomenon that I have the obtaining of, right? So if I have obtaining of a phenomenon, then I can't have non-obtaining of that phenomenon. Here, the virtues of the form realm are a future phenomenon. Thus, we have non-obtaining of a future phenomenon. We're not talking about the time when the non-obtaining occurs. We're talking about the time of the phenomenon itself. Thus, it's possible for us to have non-obtaining of a future phenomenon in the present. And just to add to that is indeed what's at hand. When we talk about obtaining and non-obtaining, once again, we're talking about phenomena within the current of our beings. The virtues of the form realm are phenomena that we have non-obtaining of, but it's potentially possible that in the future we'll have obtaining of them. When you talked about the definition that the Vaibhashika give of ordinary beings and noble beings, you also spoke about the term sentient being and the fact that this is not completely equivalent to ordinary being. And so I'm wondering if the Vaibhashika give a definition of sentient beings, and are noble beings, or maybe a part of the group of noble beings, sentient beings? Ordinary beings and noble beings are sentient beings. Mm-hmm. But a noble being is not an ordinary being. Here there are three types of beings: sentient beings, ordinary beings, noble beings. Ordinary beings and noble beings are sentient beings, but noble beings are not ordinary beings. But are there beings that are not sentient beings? It has to do with matter. A sentient being is a being endowed with a mind So we could say that all... Attends.
Mais les arêtes sont restes. Les arêtes sont restes.
What we'll propose, and what Jordy's referring to, is the fruit concerning the Vaibhashika view and Arhat without remains. So we'll try for tomorrow or later on to go back to the precise definition of a sentient being. How's that? We'll conclude here. Thank you. And we'll dedicate. Sanamdi tamche zikpani tamyene bedranam vamjene kengana chi balar chupai sipe sone drowa drowa sho. Thank you.